y'all. Let's have some draft prediction fun. Welcome back. BetMGM has given us some odds. We're going to look at those odds for the top 10, but we're also going to figure out who we think the picks are going to be as we stand now less than a week away from the NFL draft. So Thursday night, opening round, C-Rob, we all know Cam Ward's going 1 overall, right? Like
right.
BetMGM has it minus 10,000. We can all, we're all good on C-Rob.
Yeah, I think Cam. Yeah. That's, and I like the pick. I'm gonna say I do like the pick. I've come around to Cam Ward being he's gonna be a good quarterback in the NFL. I really like this pick.
Okay, we'll see.
I know we talked about. You think the Titans are gonna ruin him, and
I still think honestly, the Titans are gonna ruin him.
I can't even argue against it.
I love Cam Ward getting 2 years to develop and then playing. I just don't think he's gonna get that opportunity. But I do. We all agree. Tennessee's on the clock. Bang! They pick Cam Ward. We can just move right through that. Number 2 pick is Cleveland. Now, C-Rob, you said earlier Travis Hunter. BetMGM has him as the odds-on favorite at this point. He's minus 400. So Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter, C-Rob? We're confident on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you like the pick? Would you do that?
I do. Okay. I absolutely like the pick. And it's not only for the talent, when you consider the fact that played extremely high-level corner when that is what he was putting the time, the class and work, the study. Most of it was going into the cornerback position. But then just from a raw skill perspective, wasn't running the greatest, most tuned-up routes, wasn't spending all this time focusing on the wide receiver position, and yet was extremely good. And some teams, I think many teams, would say he's the wide receiver 1. If that is what he's going to be on the NFL as a wide receiver, we would put him at wide receiver 1. But ultimately, the reason why I love the pick is because I think when you have a player who can do 2 things at that high level, your chances of screwing this up are minimized greatly, right? Like it's if he's not a great corner, hey, you still got wide receiver on the table. If he's not a great wide receiver, you still got corner ultimately on the table. And as I said earlier, like when Andrew Berry comes out and says it's like Shohei Ohtani, I'm like, yeah, that's the guy you're taking at number 2 overall if you're saying Shohei Ohtani. And I also thought Berry tipped his hand just a little bit early on in the process at the combine. He's like, we see him as a wide receiver 1. I felt like his most recent comments were a little more expansive about like, yeah, we'd be okay playing him both ways. Well, this comes after Travis Hunter's like, hey, I'm going to play both ways. And if a team's not going to play me both ways, I'm not going to play football. So I kind of felt like Andrew Berry was leaning into that a little bit. Like, yeah, we still see him as a wide receiver 1, and there's a fatigue factor, but that's where we'd like to start him, but we can see him doing both things. It was pretty clear to me. You talk about Ohtani and you express some more openness to playing him both ways. You're taking him number 2 overall.
Yeah, I agree. Hunter's a pick here. And I've said, look, I like Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter's really, really, really good. We've seen other Abdul Carters in the draft. I've never seen another Travis Hunter. This guy's 1 of 1. We say that a lot, but it's true with this guy. When you compare him as a cornerback to Champ Bailey and as a receiver to Odell Beckham, yeah, that's the guy I'm taking number 2. Like you said, Charles, if somehow he can't do both, or he's not a good corner in the NFL, or he's not a good receiver, you just play him at the other, and you got an all-pro level player. Like, I just don't like. Yes, there are ways this can fail, but I've said my piece on Travis Hunter. I think he should play both ways because that's his value. That's why he won a Heisman Trophy last year. And maybe this dude is just different. Everybody's like, well, this has never been done before. Yeah, a guy playing both ways has never won the Heisman before either. Like, why not? Like, and I think the Browns are in the right mindset of, yeah, we're going to squeeze every drop out of this guy. And we'll adjust if we have to, but why not? Let's see what we can do.
I will bring up one player growing up in Michigan, right? A young, I grew up a Lions fan as a kid. And I remember when the Lions took Barry Sanders in the draft and people looked at his numbers at Oklahoma State and they were like, that is crazy. No one, I mean, like,
still,
I mean, like, can a guy really be that good? Can a guy really be this on the NFL level? Like, can he really, he's 5'8", like he's 220, like low center of gravity. Can he really do this on the NFL level? Because he looks so insanely different on the college level than any running back we'd ever seen. And the numbers were so ungodly and still are to this day when you look at those numbers. And then he came to the NFL and you're like, oh yeah, that guy was different. He is special and he showed us. I feel like that's Travis Hunter. We did the all juice team and I was like, I've never seen anything like this. And I
Never,
remember talking to Therese.
I don't think we ever will again. I don't think we ever will again.
Yeah, I remember talking to Therese Paylor about Charles Woodson, and we had these conversations about what if Michigan had let Woodson start and play full snaps both ways? Or what if Woodson had just been a wide receiver? Like, could he have been a dynamic? I'm kind of like, this is Travis Hunter was the answer to that question. There was a special guy. They let him do it. Deion let him play 118 snaps a game, and this is ultimately what we got out of it. It's exceptional, and exceptional is what you take at the number 2 pick.
By the way, Charles was growing up in Michigan when Barry Sanders was drafted 3rd. I'm growing up in Wisconsin when Tony Mandarich was drafted 2nd. So a little bit different, a little bit. Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know
Michigan
how that turned
State
out.
pride, the incredible ball.
Go Smarty, baby. Yeah.
Most
right.
infamous Sports Illustrated cover ever, him holding that manhole.
But you remember it,
100%.
Yeah. Oh, it's
I do.
100%.
Yep.
I've come around, by the way, on this. And Frank, I'll give you credit because I've been pretty staunch and loud that I think Abdul Carter should be the 2nd pick in the draft because it's safe and I feel safe with it. But I'll be honest, I went back and rewatched some Colorado games this week as we were getting ready, starting the prep of the draft show. And I wanted to just refresh myself. And I think you're right. Like, Travis Hunter is safer than I acknowledged at 2 different positions. It's just, you have so many, no matter what happens, you can steer his career wherever you want it to. Like, it's not an accident. The beast on The Athletic, Dane Brugler, does a great job. He had Travis Hunter clearly as his number 1 corner. And I think sometimes we forget that. Everybody's got him as the number 1 corner and the number one wide receiver. That's a level of safe. Like that. It's just it's a level of safe.
We're never going to see this again. Like, a guy legitimately could come to the draft next Thursday and be like, "Yep, I'm the best quarterback here and I'm the best receiver here."
Guys,
we will never see that again.
He won the Bolitnikoff and the Bednarik.
Yeah.
Like, how are you the best defensive player in football and the best wide receiver in football? That's great.
I'll tell you something. I went to go a couple years ago when Deion first got here. My good buddy was in town. He's a big CU guy. Wanted to go to spring game. I'm like, I'll go with you. It snowed that day, but whatever. And it took me, I swear to you, it took me about 90 seconds to be like, that's Travis Hunter right there. He just moved different than everybody else on the field. He's one of those dudes. He's just different. And I can't wait. He is the guy from this draft class.
Frank,
in the 2025 season, he's the guy I'm most excited to watch more than Mahomes or Lamar or anybody. I want to see what Travis Hunter can do this year. I'm so excited for him.
I remember watching the Colorado State game 2 years ago, and I mistook him when he was playing defensive back. I mistook him as the wide receiver a couple times. Like, I was like watching, and I'm like, and there was like a pick, and I'm like, I thought it was a completion to the receiver. I'm like, oh my God, no, that's Travis Hunter just intercepted it. Like, it was. That's how crazy it is.
He's fun. Yeah, he's right.
And I'll go back as we wrap on Travis. I will say Field Yates, the least hyperbolic, like, hot take guy I've ever met in my life. Field Yates sat on ESPN a few weeks ago and said, in my entire career, the first time he'd seen him in person was at the Colorado Pro Day. And he said, I've never seen anything like this in person. And I've asked Field about it 3 or 4 times since then. And he keeps saying the same thing. It's stuck in his head. It's going to be stuck in Cleveland's head. They'll take Travis Hunter number 2. Does that mean we're all agree Abdul Carter, who's right now the betting odds on favorite for the Giants at 3, we're all agreeing that Abdul Carter goes 3?
Yeah, I don't see any way around it. I don't see any way around it, right, Charles? Like, even though defensive line is the one thing they've done well, I think you just take the best player available.
You have money tied up. Honestly, you have money tied up in Brian Burns on the edge. You have money tied up in Dexter Lawrence inside, and then you have a 5th-year option that I think is going to be about $16 million that you have to trigger for Kayvon Thibodeau in 2025. But I also remember an era where I covered a Super Bowl where I watched the Giants roll Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan, OCU Manura. All of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm like, they have basically 3 ends on that defensive line right now. And they beat a Patriots team that hadn't lost a game in the entire season. And so to me, that was one of those special moments where you realize just because you have an abundance of talent at a position doesn't mean that you can't go a 5-man defensive line, and all of a sudden the offensive line is sitting there going, what are we doing here? Or you can even take Carter, keep everybody where they are, Thibodeau on the edge, Burns on the edge, and then you take Carter and you go, let's turn him into like a Joker type role where we move him all around between the 2 ends and just confuse the defense, see how this ultimately works. It gives you flexibility. I think in that situation, he's still the absolute best player on the board for them. You take it and you deal with having an abundance of great edge rushers, which is an awesome thing to have in the NFL.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not the worst thing to have. It's not like having too many punters. Like, having too many edge rushers, you're all right. You're doing okay.
So then the draft really starts at 4, and that's where we all get nervous about, like, we start talking about Shedeur on Thursday. Where's he going to go? Who's going to trade up? New England at 4. A bunch of needs for the Patriots, who right now are sitting there saying, my God, Frank could have had the first pick, and instead they just watched the two, most easily identifiable possible generational players go in front of them. So what's New England do at 4?
I totally forgot. I did. I can't lie that the win in Week 18 by Charles' favorite player, Joe Milton. Against the Bills team, it was like, we don't want you getting the first pick. We're sitting ever. If there was tanking in the NFL, that might have been it. They really went out of their way to lose that game, I think. And now the Patriots, instead of drafting one of these generational guys, instead of drafting Travis Hunter, they're stuck here going, well, I guess we settle for Will Campbell. He's fine. Like, he's a good player. The only question I would have is it him or Membo, the tackle from Missouri? But I just think there's so much smoke with Campbell that I'll go Will Campbell here. I'll go with the chalk. I just don't. I think they're going to draft a tackle because you have to. Like, you need to protect Drake May. Even if you love Mason Graham, I think you need to protect Drake May. So they're going to take a tackle. It's just a matter of which one, and I do think it's going to be Will Campbell.
Yeah, I think it's Campbell. Look, there's the arm length issue where if you look at the analytics, his arm length, you have not seen very many players be elite tackles in the NFL, ultimately, with what his arm length is. I guess my counter argument is, okay, you try him at tackle, maybe you get lucky, and he is the very rare offensive tackle, and I think you play him at left tackle, who overcomes, maybe he doesn't play to what his arm length ultimately measured out to, which is what you will hear. Some evaluators will say, look, I look at him on tape, I don't see concerning arm length that makes me believe he can't play left tackle in the NFL. So you play him there. If it doesn't work, you can play him at guard. And I think he can be a really good guard. You don't want to take a guard, obviously, at 4, but there is at least some flexibility here with him as a player. I just don't think you can pass addressing the offensive line at the 4th overall pick.
Correct.
If they want to deal back and take a player like Membo, if they deal back a few slots, but who's dealing up? That's the problem. I don't think anybody's trading up for the 4th overall pick. I will say this, deep down, and I know other people don't like it. I know some people at Yahoo don't like it because I've had the conversation with them. I would love to see some insanity pick here where they're like, you know what? Like, why don't we just take Jeanty? Why don't we just take a guy who we're like, that guy looks like he's going to be a superstar on the NFL level. We can't take running backs at 4. I don't know. We just watched what Saquon did. He looks like he's, he literally looks like he's a Hall of Famer right now.
If you're going best player available, he's 4.
Clearly,
but I would love to see them just blow everybody's minds and go, we're just going to go get special. Like, yeah, we need an offensive lineman. We'll deal with it some way, shape, or form. We'll scheme to it in some way, shape, or form. And we're just going to take Jeanty because he's ready to peel people's wigs off.
The only look, I agree with everything you just said. I do think that we need to acknowledge that every one of these offensive linemen have small warts, and I feel like there's less consensus than ever. So there are teams that prefer Campbell. There's teams that prefer Membo. There are teams that think you can sit around at the bottom of the first round and still get that tackle. So I do think that makes me a little nervous that it's Campbell out of the gates, but that takes us to the 5th pick because right now Mason Graham seems to be the guy that a lot of teams have, or a lot of mocks have going to Jacksonville. If I'm New England, I'm giving Mason Graham a hard look. Like I told Frank before we started, I think Mason Graham is one of the surer bets in this year's draft for somebody that I think comes in, makes an immediate difference, and is around for a minute doing that at a position that has now become a premium expenditure, also a defensive tackle. So I personally, I think if the Patriots went aggressive and just continue to address the defensive line, especially with Vrabel as the head coach, I love that move. But if it's not Mason Graham, then Mason Graham to the Jags makes sense.
And Fitz, just real quick with the Patriots. If you're approaching it that way, you're just saying, look, we're going to be the best defensive team we can possibly be next season. So it's just the position we find ourselves in, and we're going to do every single thing we can to protect Drake May as best we can with other options on the board. And then you take Mason Graham and you just say, look, we're going to try to beat the hell out of teams defensively. We'll run the ball a heck of a lot. We'll throw in an extra offensive lineman if we have to at times, even if he's a mediocre level player. We'll play with 6 offensive linemen if we have to protect Drake May and have that kind of a heavy package. It's not sexy, right? But the Patriots are digging themselves out of a hole, so I could see something like that there being a rationale there. But I do agree Jacksonville at 5. Although Jacksonville could go a lot of ways with this, frankly.
Right, that's what I keep thinking, Charles. And that's why I guess Mason Graham, that's what I'll predict. But I don't think he should be as chalky as he is. I think he's minus 155 at BetMGM. And I'm like, why couldn't they go off? Why couldn't they be a Jeanty team? Why couldn't they be Membao?
Right.
Like Membu? I'll mispronounce his name until the end of time. They need offensive line. They could draft a corner here. They could draft Barron or Johnson. It wouldn't blow me away because they could use a guy like that. Well, I think there's a lot of directions the Jaguars can go here. And I don't think Graham is a lock by any means.
And think about this too with Jacksonville. Now they do have, they have Travis Etienne, they have Tank Bigsby, right, already in that backfield. But I will say this about Liam Cohen. One of the things he did that was arguably the best things he did for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense was turn that into a team where that running game pounded the living hell out of you. Yep. And really that helped out Baker Mayfield considerably, especially when injuries hit the wideouts for Baker Mayfield. Bucky Irving had the season that he had because of things that Liam Cohen was doing inside the Tampa Bay Buccaneers system. That was one of the first things I thought about Jacksonville when Liam Cohen ultimately landed there, as I was like, okay, well, I feel better about ETN and Tank Bigsby, especially Bigsby, now that this guy is there. So I wouldn't say, look, it's completely out of the question there, but it's going to be interesting and kind of wild to see.
I don't think Graham is a lock here. I don't think Graham is a lock here by any means.
I agree. I think it's a wild pick.
The Yahoo Sports app is your ultimate draft day companion. With live activities, you can keep up with every pick without even unlocking your phone. Beef up on the incoming rookie class with expert analysis, grades, and prospect breakdowns. Download the Yahoo Sports app right now and get ready for draft night like a pro.
All right, we continue to break down. I think we sort of consensus that Mason Graham is 5, but we don't feel set on that, which brings us to 6. My hot take: the Raiders on the clock. Ashton Jeanty is the favorite for it. We've all heard that speculation over and over and over again. The closer we get to it, I just keep thinking about C-Rob, the past drafts that I've covered for the Seahawks. Like, one thing we know is that Pete Carroll and the Seahawks were never afraid to draft a running back in the first round, but also Pete Carroll and the Seahawks love to trade down, like they really did. Mm-hmm. Right. And then I keep thinking about Spytek, the new GM, who really, you mentioned that Tampa Bay team, like he built in the offensive line. The Raiders' offensive line needs help. I think the Raiders are a huge candidate to try and trade down if somebody wants to trade up for Ashton Jeanty. If they don't trade down, the closer we get to the draft, the more I wonder if Membo is actually going to be the pick. Like if it's going to be an offensive lineman because they need help there.
Well, and the interesting thing too is, and I don't know if this is a tell or not, but Colton Miller's going to be a free agent next offseason. And Colton Miller would make a lot of money as a free agent offensive tackle next offseason. And so far, it does not sound like there's a lot of traction on a contract extension for Colton Miller. I'm kind of like, okay. I mean, like, is that because there's an offensive tackle in play at number 6? So I'm with you. It's something where that piqued my interest that, the Colton Miller situation doesn't seem like there's a big sprint to go ahead and get him extended now. So I would say that, yeah, maybe offensive tackle is in play here at 6. And another thing I'll say too, I would love to see Chip Kelly with Ashton Jeanty. Like it's like a wild, wild dream scenario for me. But that said, it is a deep draft, and two of the guys that Chip Kelly obviously was scheming it up for at Ohio State could potentially be there at the top of the second round in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I love the idea of Henderson working with Chip Kelly on the NFL level as well. So I can't discount that there is some availability with other running backs that Chip Kelly is very familiar with, who should probably be there at the top of the second round for that second Raiders pick, and maybe that's what ends up pushing them more toward an offensive tackle pick.
And Spytek told a story in an interview last week about when he was with the Browns, and the tiebreaker for them was positional value, where they were trying to decide who they were going to pick, and it was, what's the drop off like? I keep thinking about that, Frank. Yeah. So yeah, huge difference.
I think that Jeanty right now going with the 6th pick is -120, and I wish I could bet the no on that because I just don't think this is Jeanty. Like, it just makes no sense for me for the Raiders to draft him. I get it. Carroll likes running backs and all that kind of stuff. You can get a running back later. The Raiders are one running back away. I don't think this is Jeanty. I'm going to double down on something I've been saying for weeks. I think the New Orleans Saints move up here and they draft Shedeur Sanders. I think that they need a quarterback, and everybody knows they need a quarterback. And in this draft, I don't think it's going to be expensive to move up, because other drafts where you're like, there's a big drop off between 6 and 9. No, there's not a big drop off between 6 and 20 in this draft, I don't think. So the Saints, we got to get our guy. Let's move a little bit. The Raiders are really not going to draft Jeanty, I don't think. So they're like, yeah, we're good moving down to 9.
What if it's Dart?
Or Dart. I was going to say that. I was going to get to that.
Dart.
Okay.
I think it's Sanders, but it would not surprise me if it's Dart. I think it's a quarterback at number 6 with the Saints. I think it's a minor move up. They're not going to have to pay too much. They can have the peace of mind, because the only thing I know about the Derek Carr situation is he ain't going to be their quarterback week 1 in 2025. Like, that just seems to be off the table at this point.
I don't know about this. I don't know about this shoulder injury.
Yeah, this is so weird.
But
I don't know what's going on, but I know Derek Carr's done there. They need a quarterback. It's not going to cost too much to move up to 6. I see the Raiders as a team that really would love to add some extra picks, move down to 9, maybe have a shot at Memba there. I think the Saints make this pick, and it's a quarterback. I think it's Sanders, but it could be Dart.
It's just hysterical to me that Raiders fans were losing their minds in my mentions at the end of the last season when they thought they were going to have the first pick and then won a game and didn't have the first pick. And everybody's saying, we just lost our shot at Shedeur. Well, guess what? I think Shedeur is still going to be there at 6. And clearly the Raiders are not going to take Shedeur. So, maybe we can all calm down at the end of the season when we talk about what it means to win a game. So if we all agree that Ashton Jeanty is still on the board, does that impact the Jets at 7 now? Because, again, BetMGM thinks that Membu is going to be the pick there right now. But I think Membu is more likely to go 6 to the Raiders. Frank's got to trade up. So now if you're the Jets, you could be deciding between Membu and possibly Jeanty. That's surprisingly there. See, Rob, who you got?
I doubt they would go Jeanty at 7. I just think, again, if Membu's there at 7, you're ultimately, again, offensive tackle versus running back. It's definitely very clearly a need. Look, the tight end spot's not great. I wonder if there's a look at Tyler Warren and you say, okay, do we like his block? Like, is he the inline tight end where he can block at a high level, as we move forward into his career and be pretty good and versatile and do a lot of different things for us? Maybe that's something that's ultimately attractive. Obviously, Aaron Glenn comes over from a Detroit Lions team that was able to use Sam Laporta to great effectiveness at some point. I know this is going to feel a little hot takey on my part, but I wonder if Colston Loveland is actually the better tight end in this draft. I'm sorry, but I hear all these people about Colston Loveland and like, oh, he's not a complete tight end. Like, can he block? I'm like, he's coming from Michigan, man. Do you not think he had to block at Michigan? Have you actually watched and do you see the effort he put into blocking and the fact that he's an athletic player? Like, it's just, it's whatever. That's for another day. We can talk about this next week as we get closer to the draft. But I think if the tackle is there, you take the tackle. But if he's not there, then I think at 7, you're potentially looking at, if he's the complete tight end who can help block, but also help Justin Fields from a skill position standpoint. I would rather go with like Warren or Loveland at 7 over even Jeanty at that point, because you do have Breece Hall. I know his production has started to fade from one year to the next, but I still think he's a high level running back, and I wouldn't stack Jeanty on top of that.
No, I could see a trade up here. Maybe a team loves Jeanty.
Yeah,
I think we're getting to the point of like, there's a lot of teams who are like Sean Payton with the Broncos, who could be like, yeah, we want Jeanty. What's it going to cost? And it might not be, Cowboys. Again, it might not be that much, because the difference between 7 and 20, it's not that big of a deal. But I ultimately think the Jets, one thing I keep thinking about the Jets, I do think it's Membu here, but what did they do last year in the draft? They had a shot at Brock Bowers, and everybody mocked them to Brock Bowers. And they took Fashanu, who probably going to be a very good tackle in the NFL. But you don't think they regret that? You don't think they regret passing out Brock Bowers a little bit? Like, Brock Bowers looked like he's going to be the best tight end in football the next decade. So I just wonder if they're like, well, yeah, let's go with Loveland here. I was surprised. Like Nate Tice, who does a great job, he has Loveland ahead of Warren too. And I think that a lot of people believe that. I think a lot of people believe in Loveland as more of a all around, like you could do it all. We don't, the tight end position has changed. We know that in the NFL. So I think they will be very tempted to take a tight end here because of the Brock Bowers miss last year. But I ultimately think they're just kind of boring and take Membu here.
All right, so then Carolina needs an edge rusher. Most people thinking Jalen Walker, who is at this point the highest odds on BetMGM. It feels like that's the right. Like, and I don't want to oversimplify here, but Frank, that just feels like the right. Like Carolina needs an edge rusher. There's one there that has a lot of diversity, can play a lot of ways. Like, why overcomplicate this?
I would love to give you a different pick, but and again, I think trades. I think the Panthers' phone is going to be blowing up, and I think they're going to answer every single call because why wouldn't you want to move down? You need a lot of defensive help. You don't need just one guy. But if they can't trade, if they don't get what they want, I do believe, it's Walker. It's just kind of easy. Like, okay, this guy helps us. We have multiple needs. We got to start somewhere. Let's take Jalen Walker.
Well, you have a defensive coordinator in Ejiro Evero where you got to get some talent, right? And I think this is a high level defensive player. I think he's obviously coming out of an extremely productive program. They've profiled the Georgia players have profiled out great thus far, as living up to the potential that they've come into these drafts with. It makes sense to me. It's again, this is gonna be a chaos draft. I'm pretty sure we're all gonna be wrong on a lot of stuff starting maybe at 4 down. But this to me makes an abundance of sense.
So then let's get spicy at 9, presuming that everything's played out the way we think it has. Now the Saints are sitting here at 9. No trades have happened yet, although Frank, I think, is right. There's a lot of possibility. Saints trying to pick, we think, a quarterback because of the Derek Carr stuff. And they've got Jaxson Dart and Shedeur Sanders on the board. And C-Rob, like, I can't ignore the noise. A lot of people are talking about Kellen Moore loves Jaxson Dart. This feels, from the outside looking in, this feels a lot of like what we heard last year when everybody was saying no. The Denver Broncos know exactly who they want. Like Sean Payton knows exactly.
Right. Yep.
And it feels like we're hearing the same stuff. So is there legitimacy to Jaxson Dart over Shedeur at 9?
So I'll say this. I have been putting Shedeur with the Saints at 9 since like March 10th. And I'm coming off that a little bit, especially like as I started to put together the All Juice team and make a lot of calls and, you end up in other kind of subset draft conversations. It came up quite a few times, like how closely the Saints had sort of followed around Jaxson Dart, doing a lot of different work on him, talking to, I think they spent quite a bit of time at Ole Miss, working on some background with him. It feels like, unless you're just trying to telegraph to everybody, hey, we really love this guy, and you're actually going to take a left turn on draft day, I think that feels like a Kellen Moore type of quarterback. And I think you could even argue from an athletic profile, are Jaxson Dart and Dak Prescott a little similar? Like kind of similar from in terms of what their athletic profile is, what they bring to the table, the arm strength. Kellen did great things with Dak Prescott, obviously in Dallas. And again, I think this Derek Carr shoulder thing, I don't think that the way that emanated out, it was not the team that's like, oh, Derek's got this shoulder injury. Like, it definitely seemed like it was coming out of Derek Carr's corner of the room, and it felt like a threat. Like, oh, you're going to do this? Like, oh, you're going to take a court? Like, I don't know if that's them responding to what they see in mock drafts and that so much work is being done on a guy like Jaxson Dart for the Saints, but it to me signals that this is definitely something that's in play enough to agitate Derek Carr and feel like they've done a number of things sort of without working in unison with him, including some contract massaging. So yeah, I will put Dart there 9. That's frankly, that's moving off me putting Shedeur Sanders there. This is the first time I have not put Shedeur Sanders there at 9. I also think there's a chance that Shedeur Sanders could be QB4 in this draft. That's something we can talk about later.
Man. Can you imagine that night? I don't know. If the Saints stay at 9, they're going to draft a quarterback, whether it's Dart or Sanders. We'll see. But I've had them already moving up because I think that's what's going to happen. I think at 9, who in this draft? The Broncos have done absolutely nothing to fix their running back situation. And who in this draft loves trading up for a guy he likes, whether it's Davenport, whether it's Olave, Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton moves up to 9 and takes Jeanty here. I think that they just screw it. What do you want? You want a second? You want a third next year? You
are really on Payton moving up.
Yep. I think Payton moves up and gets Jeanty. I just think when you look at what the Broncos did at running back, which is literally nothing, they ain't going into the season with that group Estime is not their starter week 1. We know that. And so a lot of people think, you could draft Hampton 20. You could draft a guy in the second round. I think Payton, when he likes a guy, he goes up and gets him. I think Jeanty is the pick here to the Broncos at number 9.
That would be fun.
My only fail with your logic, Frank,
behind that offensive line, oh my goodness.
Here's my only fail with your logic. My only fail is that you have New Orleans moving up from 9 to 6 to take their quarterback, which means you have the Raiders moving from 6 to 9. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell
that the
Raiders are trading with the Broncos to give
and then
Sean Payton
Jeanty twice a year. I'm not going to say you're wrong, Fitz. My logic is flawed, but I do think Payton moves up to get Jeanty. I'll just say that.
We got Frank Roseman over here making all these draft moves, trading, moving all over the board.
By my math, for me and C-Rob, that means we got all the way to 10. By the way, for the record, I'm taking Jaxson. I think
you guys think
Saints
some trades are going to happen in the top 10, though, right? Like that. Like it won't just.
I don't think teams are going to pay enough. I don't think teams are going to pay enough, and people are going to be overdrafted. I think Jaxson Dart is going to go number 9, and I think Derek Carr is going to get traded on the second day of the draft or the third day of the draft. And when he gets traded, I would say, I just spent earlier in the show saying that Pittsburgh's the one team that's screwed. How do you unscrew that?
Not by Derek Carr. No, it's not. No, yeah.
It's good enough. It's good enough. I mean, it's better than Mason Rudolph. Come on.
I guess.
By my math, that means the Bears have done nothing but sit here with their thumbs up their rear ends, and they just luck into Ashton Jeanty at 10. Like there's a very real path to me where the Bears do nothing but sit there and they get exactly what they need for this offense, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, if Jeanty's sitting there at 10 and you're Ben Johnson, I'm like, yeah, I would take that all day, every day. I really would. He's just, I think so highly of Jeanty as a player, as a prospect, and I think with what Ben Johnson was able to do with Jahmyr Gibbs, I do believe that's something he could replicate with Ashton Jeanty. I mean, look, could you argue for a tight end here if you feel like either Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland is super dynamic? I think you could. Maybe you take Tyler Warren and you say, okay, Tyler Warren is going to be sort of our Rob Gronkowski. Cole Kmet is going to be our less murdery Aaron Hernandez, and try to roll
Put
it out
that on your
that.
business card.
If we titled shows "A Less Murdery Aaron Hernandez" would be the title of this show. Yes,
that's amazing.
I think I think Jeanty goes into top 9 to Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton, that's my hill I'm going to die on. We'll see, but I do. Yes, the Bears snap pick Ashton Jeanty if he's there at 10, but I think he's not, so I think they go with Tyler Warren. I just think that, they could go with Loveland. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think it's 1A, 1B at tight end there, but one of those, I think it's either Jeanty at 10 or it's one of the tight ends at 10 to the Bears. And I'll say Tyler Warren because I have Jeanty off the board to Sean Payton.
C-Rob, before we get out of here, you did the All Juice team. That's wildly important to you, and it's wildly important to the legacy at Yahoo. Talk a little bit about it. Like, tell everybody what you discovered. Like, I want to give you the floor to give this some love. Yeah,
this was the 11th one, and it was funny because when I sat down to write about it, Terez was such a huge fan of Michigan, and we had so many conversations about Woodson, and like early in the process, I was talking to Charles McDonald, and I was like, Travis Hunter might be the most perfect all juice team player I've ever seen. Like he would probably be on like the Mount Rushmore of players coming out where you're like, God, like the way he affected both sides of the football for Colorado. I mean, you could argue that he carried them in a lot of respects. on both sides of the football for Colorado, a team that, doesn't have a ton of other abundance of NFL talent. And so it was a little gratifying there to think back to these conversations with Therese about Charles Woodson, and never really, thinking or believing a player could come along in college, play at a high level college program, play 118 snaps as a game, win the Bednarik and the Biletnikoff. And just, I mean, that was a very gratifying part of it. However, that said, you find out different things about the draft as you go through this process. And I would say that it was a really difficult team to slot, because there were so many people who were telling myself and Charles McDonald, it's like, when you get to 15, 16, sort of this zone, and you slide all the way to like the 70s, and you're going, I don't know, a lot of these players are arguably going to have similar grades. There's going to be different opinions on them, but you could be getting players at the top of the third that might have as much like impact as players in the late first. It's just going to make for a completely crazy kind of draft process. Some surprises. Cam Scadaboo out of Arizona State. He got so many votes for the All Juice team. He was not a player that I thought about. It's not like I had watched him particularly in the college football playoff, but there were just so many people who were like, is he slowish? Yeah. Is his tape a lot of fun to watch? Yes. Does he seem to have enough to make things happen? Like he's not just a banger bruiser. I thought that was really a lot of fun. He was a player that I think was present. He didn't make the team, Jalen Milroe, but it was when I learned, okay, they invited Jalen Milroe to the draft. I was like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And then yet I realized when you start to hear people talk more and more about Jalen Milroe across the NFL, you're talking coaches, executives, area scouts, you're like, wow, there's definitely a far more positive assessment of Jalen Milroe as a long-term project, maybe enough so to push him into the end of the first round. I was like, that might happen. So I like doing the team, not only to honor Therese, but also it gives you sort of a vast perspective on when you hear a name, Gray Zabel as an offensive lineman, you keep hearing it over and over and over again. Walter Nolan, a defensive tackle. You're like, okay, something's here, because everybody across all these different platforms on teams really love some of the same guys. And I'm going to watch Cam Scadaboo on draft night, because I thought this is like a fourth rounder with that speed in the NFL. I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, I first of all, Charles, kudos to you and Charles McDonald for doing this team. It's the best thing we do at Yahoo Sports every year to honor Therese's legacy. It's just a wonderful thing. I don't have much to add, although I did have moments of sadness of like, I would have loved to have heard Therese talk about Travis Hunter, like just
right.
But
yeah.
it's also uplifting it does give me like the fact that we've kept his legacy alive, and that we talk about Travis Hunter and talk ball like Therese would have wanted. The piece you guys put out was just fantastic. Even if you don't know much about Therese, who is an incredible guy, you read that and you learn so much about the draft. You learn a lot about what these general managers, scouts, everybody's thinking about these players, the guys who fit that, the All Juice team and what it's all about. It's just wonderful. And yes, it made me sad for many obvious reasons, but it also just made me feel good. It made me feel full, because we're still talking ball, and we're still got a guy like Travis Hunter, who I know Therese would have just been talking every day about him. So again, Charles, you're my dude. We argue a lot, but it's all in fun. And great job with this, and honoring Therese like that is just, it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
I will say this too about the team. We have this, I feel like every year that we've done it, and there have been different contributors, obviously Charles McDonald now, Pete Thamel in the past, Eric Edholm in the past. We've all picked up the slack, but I feel like it's the same conversation at the beginning of the process every year, because the way Therese built the team, it wasn't just taking the best 22, 23 guys.
Yeah, right,
it wasn't. That was not it at all. You had to slot them in the draft, treat it like you were drafting a team. And every single year, you're sitting there and you're lining up to do it, and you're going, damn it, like, we're going to have a shortfall at this position. Like, what do we do? And it's like C-Mac and I were like, all right, we're going to have to take somebody in the 7th who's going to have to be like, we need, like, you're trying to figure out where can we get a contributing player in the 7th round? Where are we going to get a priority free agent who's going to make a roster? And it's awesome that he thought that way. I love that he thought in a challenging way. Let me build a team. Let me not just make an all-star team. Let me actually challenge this and try to pick players in different areas of the draft and then slot them into a roster. I think that, to me, this mechanism is probably more realistic to what it's like to be a GM than any other mock draft or team that I see put together. This mechanism of forcing you to think about it in different tiers and draft a team in different tiers is so much more embracing of how it really goes, I think, for NFL teams than anything else. And there's some genius in that from Therese.
It's beautifully done by you guys. It's out on Yahoo Sports right now. Check it out. The All Juice team. It's a great way to learn about some of these players going into next week, but it's also, more importantly, just a huge part of the legacy that Yahoo Sports is passionate about keeping on the forefront of everyone's minds. Great work by you, C-Rob, as always. And we appreciate it. You guys can follow us on social media at Yahoo Schwab, at Charles Robinson, at Jason Fitz. Again, rate, review, subscribe. Tell everybody to hang out with us again next Thursday and Friday. We'll be here for the first 3 rounds of the draft as well. So a lot of exciting time coming, a lot of exciting work coming. In the meantime, have a great weekend and check us back out on Tuesday as we will be just on the precipice of the chaos known as the draft.